If I asked you what cities you thought would be fashion capitals of the world, what cities come to mind? Do you think of Paris, Milan, London, New York? What about if I asked you about American fashion? What cities do you think of then? Do you think of New York, LA, maybe even Austin? Well, New York is actually the capital of American fashion, and it's been around for over 100 years, the Garment District, which is the center of fashion in New York. But there are some laws currently trying to be changed that could affect that, which is bad because the Garment District is the largest employer in New York, and it brings in a large amount of revenue to the city each year. But there are many American designers that have joined the Save the Garment Center initiative, and they're working to save these laws and try and protect the Garment District. So a little history about the Garment District. It actually began when slave owners were looking for clothing for their plantation workers, but didn't want their workers to have to spend time to make those clothing. Um, but then in the 1800s, that's when New York became the center for American fashion, mostly because of immigrants that they used for cheap labor in the factories. But immigrants came to New York with like business sense, and they always wanted to work. And it was also because New York is such a good port city. It's located on the Hudson River near the Atlantic Ocean, and it's such a good resource to get product to and from. And then in the 1860s, with the invention of the sewing machine, that's when ready-to-wear fashion was born, which is just like every day you can find that clothing anywhere, like any store, Old Navy, Gap, like that type of thing. And then that's when people began buying their clothes over making it. And then during the Civil War, the Army actually needed mass-produced uniforms, and that's where factories in the Garment District came into play. By 1910, 70% of women's clothing came from the Garment District, and in 1931, the Garment District had the highest concentration of fashion manufacturers in the world. And then it was estimated that in the 1960s, 95% of American fashion was made in the Garment District. In the mid-70s was actually the peak of manufacturing and production in the Garment District, and that has since declined since the use of cheap overseas labor began in the 1980s, and it still continues on today. Through the years, that has gradually hurt New York's economy, and it's just overall not good. So to protect that, in 1987, there were laws put in place for fashion tenants in the Garment District that helped to keep a stable price on their leases, so they wouldn't go up and they wouldn't have to increase their production costs. But in 2007, the New York government wanted to try and lift those laws to try and change that real estate and get more like high-end consumers there. And that's when the Save the Garment District kind of began. Many designers worked on it, and their goal is to keep manufacturing and suppliers from moving or being shut down from the Garment District, which would happen if prices got too high. Currently, fashion production is at 3%, which is still relatively high, and that includes 846 different fashion companies, which employ thousands of workers. And those 846 companies are bigger than all the fashion companies in London, Paris, and Milan combined. And since it is so large, it brings in about $2 billion in revenue to New York, and that's with all the fashion jobs and different events like Fashion Week that happen every February and September. There are many designers involved in Saving the Garment District, and they do a lot of like in-house work with like they make everything there. They don't source it to different companies to be made. This includes all ranges from couture dresses to evening wear and lingerie. Many bigger designers of this include Nanette Lepoire, Anna Sui, Jason Wu, and then many smaller designers, such as like where I intern at U Serrana. We make everything here in New York. That's where we get all of our fabric from. Like I've done many errands in the garment district, gotten many fabric and from different suppliers. So in conclusion, in the long run, the garment district's not going anywhere right now because of its long, rich history. It's the center for American fashion. It has declined, but so has like every other factory that used to be in the United States in every production. But there is that cultural importance to the city, and I believe many designers see that, and that's why they have chosen to stay. And because of this, it still brings in significant revenue. So it's not going anywhere soon. There may be changes to these laws, but it will stay, and the garment district will be there.